No sound.
There we go. Do we have sound now? And Todd says no sound. Prince says no sound. Steven says no sound. We should have sound now, hopefully. My mic is turned on.
Everything's good with the mics.
Okay. And Speedman says, keeps freezing, watching from Grand Prairie, but that was the old chat. And Lyle Norman, thank you so much for the $2 super chat saying no sound. There should be sound now because I'm looking at the sound wave. So if it says yay, okay, apologies for that. And I was saying hello to Beulah Hillier from Innisfail. Thank you for being here. And thank you to everybody that let us know that it was glitching.
Okay, let's get right back into it then. Let's start with John talking to Albertans, and let's see if the internet connection works so we can actually watch these clips here.
The things, exactly. Okay, apologies for all the mishaps. Oh, hold on. I forgot to post it to X.
No, that's fine. Let's just keep going.
So we were here with John talking to Alberta and talking to a family from Iraq asking and talking that have been in Canada since 2006, I believe, and asking them what their opinion on Canada and Alberta is.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting conversation. I actually respect the dialogue that they had back and forth, and they're a different kind of immigrant. This is not the new wave of immigrants that's coming in that just wants to take from Canada and then overpower Canadian culture with their own culture. They want to adopt Canadian culture. You can respect this kind of immigrant coming in.
Yes. Let's continue.
And like, I've lived here for a long time. And when I was 10 years old or 20 years old coming here, there were no immigrants here. There were no immigrants here. It was completely different. There was a few, right? But now it seems in the last couple of years, it's just completely changed. Like,
challenge.
Yeah. Like, do you think that people have a right to preserve their culture?
Not entirely, not force it to other people, to the original people here.
Yeah.
You cannot force people for your culture, what you bring from your country, and force it and they to here.
Yeah.
But you want to practice it in your home.
Yeah.
Not here, not outside.
Yeah. Canada, we come to Canada just for Canada life. Not, I know you should be respect where you're from, which culture, I understand.
Yeah.
Respect it. But inside like a community just. But in Canada, everything. Stampede, Canada, wherever for System Canada, you should be living in Canada. Because life is here. For you, for your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, imagine there was a ship sailing down the river and you slowly started taking pieces out of it because they were broken or something.
And you can leave it there, but this was a great conversation. I highly recommend going to John Talking to Albertans channel and watching that full conversation. It is rather lengthy. A lot of respect for those individuals actually having the conversation there and not seeing the flag and just trying to shut down the conversation, because a lot of people are doing that.
Exactly.
And I'll say, I wish I had brought my flag, but it takes a little while to set up, and we only got one flag.
We're waiting for the other one.
Yeah, we got a second flag coming. So,
and because I don't have any notes, I don't know which segment we're on, but I think we're still in Alberta Stay Free. Marty up north says, quote, hold on. It never ends. Today, Statistics Canada published a report entitled Wildfire Experiences Among Indigenous Peoples 2021 to 2024. Did you know that Indians living in Winnipeg experience wildfires differently than their non-Indian neighbors? Well, now you do.
This is absolutely ridiculous. And the federal government is constantly doing things like this. This is another example of specialty groups in classes, excuses to give one group special treatment or any number of other things, benefits, you name it, but they want to put a research paper behind it. So they have something to credit when they do benefit one group over another. A lot of people are waking up to Alberta. If we get and when we get our independence, no specialty groups or classes. Everybody needs to be equal in the eyes of the law and the government.
But then again, a lot of those First Nation groups probably do know how to manage the forest properly. They were the ones that were originally doing the controlled burns and knowing how to foster a healthy relationship with the forest, where yes, there will be fires during the summer, but even centuries not decades, centuries, was more than centuries, but a long time ago, when Indigenous peoples, First Nations peoples were taking care of the forest, they were doing these things anyways. They were clearing the brush. They knew when the seasons were going to start sparking, and they had this knowledge that now nobody wants to remember about.
Yeah, even more than that, we can do massive brake lines and things like that, make a profit off that. And so we can fund other ways of fighting forest fire as well. This is a huge problem in Canada, and it's a problem that the government wants to exacerbate because it fits right into their ideology and what they want overall.
Exactly. I think the next one is for the next segment. So from what I remember, I don't have a photographic
Alberta
memory.
Politics.
I know it is Alberta Politics, but let's go back to your comments and then we'll go into Alberta Politics. get back on track with the show. Todd says, there you go. Thank you so much for coming back, Todd, and everybody else that did join us back on this part 2 of the stream that didn't work. Stephen Jensen says, here with Todd. Oh, hello, Todd as well. Pop up at Stelter Rodeo. We had a t-shirt wearing Forever Canadian, come talk to us. They need help. Oh, but at least they were talking to you.
Yeah,
That's
I wonder what they said.
Yeah. Let us know if you can. Todd says, still smoky in Stettler. And unfortunately, and again, it seems like it is really hot, at least in Calgary. So again, if they don't manage the forests properly, it'll continue to happen. Teresa Freedom says, do you think that there is any hope for them? Asking Stephen Jensen, but do you think there's any hope for the Forever Canadians?
They have their elbows so far up their ass, it's ridiculous. They've bought and drunk in the Kool-Aid from Mark Carney. I don't think they're going to wake up even after Mark Carney is failing in real time and they can't see it. Even after he fails, they're going to just want to put the next Liberal in power and the next one and the next one. And after they're done with Liberal after Liberal, they'll probably want to go to the NDP, is how deranged they are at this point. And this is why Alberta needs its independence. The way the Canadian federal government is supposed to work, it's not supposed to be all the power is not supposed to be consolidated with the federal government. The provincial government and local municipalities are supposed to have the majority of control. It's completely been flipped on its head now. Smaller government means Alberta needs to get the heck out of Canada.
Yes. I was checking if my buttons are working. They are working. Stephen Jensen says, I don't think so, but I got it all on video. Good. And Todd says, he said Danielle Smith was tied to the oil mafia.
Yeah, they look at Danielle Smith the same way we do, just from different aspects. Both sides don't like her at this point.
Again, that fascist pancakes lady, the one that's sort of yelling at Danielle Smith, it's funny because she doesn't realize that it's now essentially coming from both sides because she's in one way or another betrayed both sides.
Yeah, but the federal government is also just handing her layup after layup after layup. They want to make her look good right now. They've tapped her on the shoulder. She's obviously a federalist at this point. The best way they can convince non-politically engaged people to stay in Alberta is to make Danielle Smith look like a shining diamond.
Todd says, he said, there's no bad laws being made by Liberals, guy. That he knows of. He's researched, I'm guessing. Did you tell him some of the bad laws that have been now legislated and put into effect and solidified by the Liberals for the past 15 and 10 years?
Yeah, there is no bad laws when you like everything, when you love mass immigration, because that's the thing. I would go right to mass immigration because the way they're codifying that into law, the way they're not actually enforcing the laws that are on the books as well. This is next level. There's a reason Alberta wants to leave, why Saskatchewan wants to leave, why Quebec wants to leave, and it's only just beginning.
That or when you don't understand or haven't even looked into the implications of a lot of the laws that you see as good and what the real ramifications and real effects are going to be and have been already. There's all the censorship bills. Again, right now it sounds great to have these hate speech laws for them, but what happens if one day, God forbid, a conservative comes in and starts applying that on the other side, on the other hand, into religions that you want to apparently support? Todd says, we told him about the bad laws. He seemed to agree with them all. Oh, great. Well, then he's just stupid. Teresa Freedom says, oil mafia. There's no oil mafia, but what about the dairy mafia? That is a big problem with the U.S.
Yeah, the dairy industry would be perfectly fine. It would actually distribute into a lot of different provinces. Right now, they got a monopoly on it and it lies in the east. This is like a lot of the monopolies. They set this up so it benefits the Laurentian elites, people in Ottawa, people in Quebec.
William Rebell says, yay, Nat and Guy are back. Yeah.
Yeah, we almost called it, but I was like, okay, our primary Wi-Fi is here. The other set has an offshoot. So I was like, maybe the primary Wi-Fi will work better, and it did. And every time around the same time, the breaker seems to be going out lately, and I think it's the construction people getting off between 4:30 and 5.
But it's for the whole area where we are. It's not just within our apartment. Philip Vespa says, rest of Alberta is right. Elections Alberta is playing a dangerous game by applying different standards to each side. I will not accept the results if we lose in October. Danny is gone at the AGM.
Yeah, absolutely. And just learn from Trump. I'm not accepting the frickin' result. I'm going to keep going here.
And continue to put that pressure on the scrutinizing of those results. results and scrutinizing of who's allowed to vote, what's happening with Forever Canadian, and maybe even other TPAs.
But you think we're going to
For the
lose
other
it
side.
if somehow we don't win a non-binding referendum, which you wouldn't even give us a binding referendum? You expect us to just eat that and never try again? You're absolutely out of your mind. Give us a binding referendum, and then we'll call it a day. Until you do that, there's no hope, and there's no hope that we're stopping.
But now let's go to Alberta Politics, and hopefully all the stories that I think are in that section are actually in that section.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
Let's start with this from Keith Aramco saying, quote, "This has precisely nothing to do with child safety, and I can only guess it's about one of the censorship laws."
Yeah, this has everything to do with the censorship laws. They don't clarify right in the beginning, but this has nothing to do with censorship. They are stealing your freedoms through child protection, through health, through security, you name it, through the climate. This is how they're taking your freedoms, and they're saying it's for your own benefit. Absolutely ridiculous. Give me my freedoms and leave me alone.
To be clear, like, the reason we're behind is because the Liberal government you were a part of previously promised in 2019 to usher this through the legislative process and ultimately didn't. Now it's taken over a year to actually introduce this bill. And my understanding is, and there was confusion actually when you announced it, that the ban won't even take effect immediately after the bill gets royal assent. So when it comes to parents who are watching right now and wondering, like, is this government going to come through for me and make things safer for my kids? Can you assure them that you will, given that history?
So two things. We fully expect the moratorium to come into force when the law comes into force, with a number of social media platforms that are the obvious suspects in this case. And when it comes to making sure that this is effective, that we can get the commission up and running in time, Prime Minister and I had this conversation about making sure that we could get this up and running within 18 months, and that's what we will expect to happen.
And pause it just for a quick sec, but was there no pushback on this? This is absolutely ridiculous. The federal government is going to take your freedoms, and every province just goes along with it. The primary balance of power is supposed to lie with the provinces. I don't even think this should be a federal decision at this point.
That's still 2 years away. If you look through, like, let's say in the best case scenario, it takes 6 months because the House is going to rise, right? And you're not going to come back until September. The legislation has to be debated. Yes, you have a majority. You'll get it through. Then you've got another 18 months. Like, that's still an additional 2 years. This was originally promised in 2019, with all due respect.
I love that.
Okay, and we can leave it there. And I will say something else. There is a lot of rumors about the wars in Ukraine and Iran kind of combining, and there being a World War III or a broader war there. If something like that happens, now I happen to be one of the commentators that don't think it's going to expand until at least Trump is out of office. That being said, let's just say hypothetically it does. This allows a lot of countries, and Canada being one of those, to start declaring the Emergencies Act, the War Times Acts, things like this, and they can just push all these bills through, and there will be no resistance at that point.
But I will also say, how broken is Canada? How broken is the mentality of even a lot of these parents, if it's true that what she's saying, that, oh, parents keep asking, when is this going to be implemented? When is my child's safety going to be implemented by the federal government? It's up to the parents. It's broken if the parents are already looking towards the government to govern everybody, themselves and their own kids, instead of them taking their responsibility or even thinking that they have the ability and responsibility to take care of their own children.
Well, the parents should be asking, when am I going to get my parental rights back?
Yeah.
Why do you keep stripping my rights and freedoms, not only over myself, but over my children as well? Alberta needs its independence. And if we want to save the world, not only for ourselves, but our children and our grandchildren, now is the time.
But next, Berta Proud Dad says, quote, "Coming to Canada as an international student is a privilege, not a guaranteed path to a job, permanent residency, or citizenship. A study permit is temporary. When your legal stay ends, you leave unless another status is approved. Canadians come first, always." Hold on. Because, as you know, and you probably all know, there are a lot of protests, including in Calgary, of students that now want to be citizens for no reason.
Here in the Settletown Circle, it's the third day of student protest. They've been sitting here in this hot weather. Kirpan, what do you think about this?
You know, it's very unfortunate that, in Canada, that these students are protesting against the government.
They should actually be happy that they have the opportunity to protest against the government. They have the right to do that in this country. We're going to get to rights and privileges in a minute, though.
I would have never thought that this would happen in Canada. So this is very unfortunate for all the Canadian citizens and Canadian government itself. It's 31 degrees today.
And it's going to be hot for the entire week, so I recommend stay hydrated.
These students are protesting because they got refusals because of nothing. There are no reasons. I think about 500 students got refusals, and then they have followed all the legal obligations. They have followed all the rules.
You're getting refusals. You're still going to stay in Canada. Everybody knows the routine, and they're actually going to students and they're telling them what to do. Once you don't get PR status, you're just going to claim refugee status. And at the end of 2027, they're going to open the PR doors back up. This is the juggling act they're doing. PR, student visas, refugees. Over 2 million refugees are coming in a year right now. When they started repressing PRs, they just opened the doors for refugees, and they're telling students to apply under refugee status. So all these students are still going to be in Canada at the end of the day.
Schools, they applied for the post-graduation work permit, and without any reason, there are refusals coming after, like one after one. So they're protesting and they want their right.
Sorry, miss, here's where you've got it absolutely wrong. Coming to Canada on a study permit is a privilege. It is not a guaranteed path to permanent residency or citizenship. When your studies and legal status end, you either qualify to stay under Canadian law or you leave. I wouldn't enter another country.
And I disagree with that there. And this is what Canadians need to wake up to. And what he says is, well, if you qualify under Canadian law, you can stay. Well, no, Canadian law needs to change because they're just doing a juggling act and they're telling everybody, okay, PR doors closed, refugee doors open, just reapply as a refugee or reapply under this status. And the legal system is rigged for mass immigration. So I think the system itself needs to be changed at a fundamental level. Mark Carney is really trying to fudge the numbers and keep mass immigration going.
Country temporarily, protest its rules, then demand the right to remain in that country. That's not immigration. That's entitlement. Canada has every right to enforce its borders and the conditions people agreed to when they came here as a student.
They want the government to look into this case, and they want the government to take action as soon as possible.
Stand on guard for thee. Literally says it in our national anthem. And it's nice to see more and more people are standing up to this entitlement in our country.
Okay, and we can leave it there. Fantastic little clip, but again, the government is doing a mass juggling act with mass immigration.
But I will also say, as somebody that came in while the Conservatives were still in power in Canada, I do have to say, the guy's leaving. I do have to say that it's very different, and I think it's also something that a lot of people don't want to touch or want to talk about. And I do commend, for example, Clyde do something like 3-4 years ago, doing a whole investigation into how a lot of these diploma mills were working within Vancouver. But again, it's the same system that works throughout all of Canada, and that has been implemented and has been allowed to continue to function, especially due to the lax laws that the Liberals started putting in with regard to immigration. I will say, I came in, I did a 4-year university degree, paying full tuition, international student fees, etc. And what I was told is you get a post-graduation work permit only if you do the full 4 years, you do the full 4-year program or a master's or a doctorate degree, but you did have to be invested in those studies. Then you get the post-graduation work permit for 4 years. You have to be able to prove that you've worked within Canada for 4 years before you can even think of applying for permanent residence. The way that it was changed is now these kinds of 2-year programs, some of them were being allowed to get in, were being allowed to get a post-graduation work permit, but IRCC, or Immigration Refugees Canada, had said, technically, no, it's not allowed, but because you allowed, or you were very lax with certain people from, it's certain different kinds of students that did get the opportunity to, and now they all think that they can. Yeah. And I do think it's very different, the type of student and the type of investment and the type of, person that you get from a 4-year full university. Not that I think you should just be able to get whatever you want automatically, but it's a very different story when you're going through a diploma mill to essentially a backdoor to get into Canada faster, rather than, okay, I want to go study there and I actually do the full 4 years of working, do the paying the taxes, do the XYZ before I can even think of applying
I completely
for permanent residency. Again, I don't think education at all should be used as any kind of path towards immigration, but if it's already like that within the system, then at least recognize that the ones that are now trying to get the same things that the 4 or more year students were getting, the international students, it's a very different type of immigrant you're getting, or student that you're getting.
Yeah, I completely disagree. Nat might have got her citizenship through that, but I don't think students should be automatically getting citizenship through this at all. I don't care if...
That's what I just said. I said, I don't think that that's the path that it should be working, but that's the way Canada decided it to be. And then they stopped looking and then stopped enforcing even their own rules. That is what I'm saying is wrong. And again, I think they need to fix immigration and then stop immigration completely, but they can't do that because now they've essentially planned their full year till 2050 fully dependent upon immigration instead of encouraging local Canadians to have more children and giving them the conditions necessary to be able to form those families and actually increase the population that way. They want to do it by importing people that just don't fit
The other way doesn't work, and they don't know how to do it the other way. What they need is they need a mandate from the people saying no more mass immigration. You have the people that you have, and now you're under pressure to figure it out, to figure out how to get your population to actually reproduce, create those conditions. And until they have to, they're not going to do it. They're going to keep relying on mass immigration. I say no more mass immigration, no more students, no more none of this BS.
But then we don't disagree. At the end of the day, we don't disagree.
Okay. Sure we
Next, YT Whisper says, quote, I don't know how Edmonton does it. When I see something like this, I just pray the water hasn't covered a rainbow crosswalk or bike lane.
Yeah, and people were talking about the flooding that was happening in Edmonton there. And as soon as this flooding goes down, what are they going to do? They're going to start repainting the rainbow crosswalks.
Oh, it's just flooding.
And pretty bad flooding there.
Starting to look like Mexico City.
Yeah, Mexico City looks the same way, but on a regular basis. Yeah. Especially in the downtown core. We live outside of the downtown core.
Yeah, so. we don't live close to Mexico City itself, but it is crazy that, again, it's because the drainage systems aren't being taken care of. And once you stop looking after your own infrastructure, well, things like that start popping up.
Well, and God knows if it's not just being exasperated by water lines and water mains. And a lot of people are having to pay a lot for water right now because the city is neglecting a lot of what's going on.
Yes, but next, Cecile Shaw says, the truth is Canada has lots of trade restrictions that it insists upon in its relationship with the U.S. And the U.S. is saying, no, I'm not doing it anymore. And a lot of people don't seem to grasp the concept of a country. They talk a lot about sovereignty, and yet they don't want to respect the U.S.'s sovereignty and the U.S. imposing its own ways of doing things.
It means that nobody is telling the truth. And the truth is that Canada has lots of trade restrictions that it insists upon in its relationship with the U.S. And the U.S. is now saying, no, I'm not doing it anymore. And the Canadians are all up in arms like, no, we get to do this. Canada's like the little brother. Canada's used to getting access to the U.S. just because we're here, just because we're smaller. But because we're smaller and more vulnerable, we've always insisted upon having special rules that protect things that we think are sensitive, like culture and dairy and airlines and so on and so forth, right? And the Americans are saying, well, no, actually, not anymore. You've been taking advantage of that for a long time. We've let you get away with it. We're not doing it anymore. And
we're going to keep playing this. But I will say, yeah, Canada has taken full advantage over the United States as well as a lot of other countries. And rather than invest in the future so that they don't have to rely on the United States, they became used to it. And it's an expectation now. And the United States says, no, we can't afford to carry all these countries anymore. Canada wants to complain, and they're feeling it now.
And at the same time, being incredibly ungrateful while they're at it.
Well, what did they decide to do? Build massive social welfare systems, massive things to attract more immigrants and give them $86,000 a year, give free healthcare. The United States doesn't get to have a lot of this. Why? Because the United States is actually paying for the military, paying for this world economy, and all these other countries don't have to.
And in response, Canada's having a tantrum, like a little brother. It's time for this country to grow up. We are reluctant to acknowledge that we, in fact, are dependent on the U.S. economically, militarily, culturally, even. And we don't want to admit it to ourselves because the origin of the country is to oppose them, to oppose the expansion of the Americans into the rest of North America. Mm-hmm. Okay? I would like to see us get rid of that attitude, but I don't know what the clear path to do that is. Much of the population, the reason the politicians do this, of course, is that much of the population is inclined this way. They have a knee-jerk anti-Americanism embedded in them as well. So it's a political problem.
I don't even know where to start.
But I wouldn't even say bred by who? Bred by their very same government. And again, it's become part of the Canadian ethos to hate on the US and try to say, oh, we're better than the US. And again, being incredibly ungrateful, again, as Clyde Do Something told us during his interview. And I think it does come from and stem from the propaganda that the federal government itself has put into place. And that is where this mindset comes from.
In the sense of shifting that mentality. Actually, that's not true. It starts with leadership, like you said. And it starts with the communicating of what is actually truth and what's going to help Canada. I think Canada needs to remember, actually, no, let's say I think. Canada needs to remember that our relationship with the United States is not a right. It's a privilege. And when we have a relationship with them, we are in an amazing geographical position to trade with the largest economy in the world. And we're deciding to put up a fight and to have, to be honest, a petty temper tantrum over things where if you had proper leadership, and if, as you alluded to, if somebody would say, guys, the truth is we want the best relation, you said it, if there is the truth, and also a side note, access to proper information and other opinions on this, citizens might be more informed to be like, okay, is how our prime minister acting actually in our best interest? And also the Conservative Party. Should they be taking a different stance to help move this the right direction? Because that's not a strong stance they've been taking, as you've just said.
Well, one of the most childish responses, I think, has been from Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who
100%.
basically said, well, you know, we can take America down. We're going to cut off supplies to, I don't know what else he said, but he said energy.
And you can leave it there. I will say Bruce Party is really, since Jordan Peterson's illness and he's kind of out of the public eye, hopefully he does get better soon, has really been that voice of freedom and is identifying the subjects that I think are absolutely crucial, not only to Canada, but to the world, whether it's specialty groups or classes or issues with the United States. I mean, there is a litany of issues. Bruce Party, I said, is one of the big thought leaders in Canada right now.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if this next story is still on this section, but J-Gen Xer says, quote, Dr. Julie Panez.
And again, we lost our notes when we changed sets today. I accidentally deleted them, so we might not know where all the sections are today.
It's still the same news. Dr. Julie Panez said...
Oh, then this was the next section.
Okay. Then I'll wait.
Okay.
Let's go to comments because I do see there is. And then we'll go into...
I think the last one was, the one with the Bruce Party was supposed to be for personalities as well.
Okay, apologies. But now let's go to your lovely comments, and let's start with Jay Smokes. Jay Smoke asks, are you both in Mexico? Yes.
Yeah, we fled Canada.
Can I make my hand show? Because it kind of looks like we're in two different sets. But
we already fled Canada. They stepped over every red line with the jibby jab era. There was nothing like Alberta's independence at the time. I'm glad there is now. It gives me a lot of hope that there's a critical mass of individuals within Alberta because it's the most conservative province within Canada. We can win this thing. We don't. Everybody doesn't have to be pushed out of the country. They can take the country with them at this point and really send a message to Canada, Ottawa, and these politicians that have no care for the citizens anymore.
In case anybody doesn't know, I am from Mexico. That's why we are in Mexico. Lived in Canada for 13 years. Alba Twitch says this dystopian hellhole was bought with generations worth of silent complacency that has been trained into the population, I will also add. Tal Talks, hello, says, howdy again, Nat and Guy. Hello, and thank you for being here. Says, Alba Twitch says, oh my God, this country is so cooked. And I'm guessing that was from the student protests. Tal Talks says, freedom for Alberta. Yes, as soon as possible. And Philip Vespa says, I will have to deal with these quote unquote students in my graduate program. I wish it wasn't so. Yeah. And again, when you look at the graph distribution of where these students, and especially in the latest years, have been coming from, it's very different than, 10, 20 years ago.
These kids never known freedom. They're born broken. They never know the other side, so they don't know what to reach for here.
Dolly Robinson says, only in Edmonton, stupid enough to drive into a flood. Happens a lot in Mexico, you would be surprised. But again, not surprising either way. But now let's go into the actual segment we were supposed to be on, which is Alberta Personalities.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done, we're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
And let's start with, again, this from J-Gen Xer, saying, quote, Dr. Julie Panez just said what a lot of Canadians are thinking, but rarely say this clearly. Income tax, sales tax, property tax, carbon tax, CPP, Sorry, I had to read while I went down.
Dear Prime Minister Carney, I'm writing this because I'm tired of asking these questions into the void and getting silence back. When you add it all up, income tax, sales tax, property tax, carbon tax, CPP, the tax is baked into everything I buy. I'm handing over close to 70 cents of every dollar I earn. Before I've bought groceries, before I've paid the mortgage, before I've done anything I want with the money I worked for. So I want to know why. Why does the government keep backing the banks, propping them up while the rest of us are told to just tighten our belts? Why do you keep pushing RRSPs, locking our money away, tied to the very system you control when there are other ways to save that don't hand you decades of control over our future? And why does our money keep ending up overseas, funding things we didn't vote for while our own people can't afford housing, can't afford food, can't get ahead? I'm not against paying my share. I'm against paying it into a system that doesn't work for the average Canadian. So here's my question, plain and simple. Where are we supposed to put our money so it's actually safe and actually has a chance of keeping up with what you're doing to our dollar? Because right now, it feels like the system isn't built to protect us. It's built to control us. Yours truly, your actual boss, in case you forgot.
And way too nice about it. And that's the Canadian way. Like, you're taking 70 cents of people's 70 cents of every dollar. It's absolutely ridiculous. And we're not just talking about income tax here. We're talking about GST, PST, all these other ways they're going to tax you. A million ways to Sunday. 70 cents to every dollar. That would be a revolution in a lot of other countries.
But there at the end, she asks, where am I supposed to put all this money if it's not going to be benefiting me if I spend it in Canada? Well, you can do as Mark Carney himself does and put it in the US.
Well, especially when the Canadian dollar is expected to fall off a cliff. A lot of these people's savings are going to disappear into the wind if they even have savings at this point when the Canadian dollar drops. Canadian dollar is going to become the Canadian peso pretty soon.
And a lot of people's behinds will fall off of them when they realize where, for example, their Canadian pension plan has been spent and what it has been invested in and how much money has actually been lost, especially considering that now the low wage, the new imports, I will call them, that are paying way less into the CPP are not going to be sufficient to take care of all the people that are now aging because Canada decided to replace its population not with babies but with immigrants.
Well, this is another reason Alberta needs to get out is because of the CPP. It is a collapsing pyramid scheme that the Canadian government has devised here. Get out now. Albertans have a lot of young, hardworking people that do pay into the CPP, actually more than any other province. You're well set up to make the CPP the APP when Alberta does get its independence.
And to actually maybe teach people how to manage their
and the CPP
retirement
is
better.
the
Canadian
pension plan. The APP would be the Alberta pension plan, which doesn't exist right now.
And then this next one, I don't know if it was in Alberta Personalities, but let's see. Franco Terrazano says, just because you respect a king or queen doesn't mean you should be living like one on the Canadian taxpayers' dime. The Governor General's salary is nearly $400,000 per year. They get a clothing allowance. When they leave office, they can still expense taxpayers up to $200,000 a year. If you don't know who the Governor General is, it is essentially the representative of the king, in this case, in Canada.
Here's the issue. Number one, yes, you're right, massively in debt. Okay, the government's more than $1 trillion in debt. Interest charges on the debt cost each Canadian about $1,400 this year, okay? Every dollar you pay in federal sales tax is going to pay interest on the debt, so the government is broke. Absolutely. But you know what? This is also a moral issue, okay? This isn't the government's money. This is money they're taking from Canadians for these crazy, outrageous perks and expenses. So even if the government was running these surpluses flush with cash, I don't care. It's not right for government bureaucrats to be living like kings and queens on the expense of other people, okay? Just because you represent a king or queen doesn't mean like you should be living like one off the backs of Canadian taxpayers. Here's the issue. Number one.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know Mark Carney with his airplane food, God, hundreds of thousands of dollars just disappearing.
For 3 flights. What was it? 175,000 for 3 flights?
Yeah, something like that.
Crazy like that. This next one, I don't know if it...
No, that's it.
That's it. Okay, now let's go back to your comments and then we'll go to the next segment. Michael Drader says, it was cooked 15 years ago when my after-degree classmates were longing for a system like Sweden. Yes, and I will say similar to my story. Michael Drader says, Guy, that's an insult to the peso. China's dollar is going way off the South African rand.
Well, what we're seeing happen...
The way of the South African rand.
What we're seeing right now, and we got a story about it later, funnily enough, about Canadians coming down to Mexico and saying, well, the Mexican peso is going up. Things are costing more. Now, yeah, the peso's going up. The Canadian dollar has stayed stable by some miracle, but it's expected, and people are shorting the Canadian dollar like never before. It's expected to drop to 60 or even 50 cents. When that happens, what happens then? That's when Canadians become trapped in Canada and they can no longer afford to leave.
Aside from having to actually pay to have the option to leave, which is something they want to implement.
Oh, there was only one comment?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I was talking.
Sorry. I thought you sounded like you were going into the next story.
No.
Okay.
KP for you over in RUMBLE says, LMAO, I was just saying no volume. LOL, good day, everyone. Good that there's volume on RUMBLE as well. If you didn't know, we also simul-stream, I guess, to RUMBLE. And then we have a whole segment after this YouTube show ends that there's things that are too spicy for YouTube that YouTube doesn't like us to talk about. And today it's pretty packed, so stay tuned. KPPU says, question, if Elections Alberta is in charge for counting our votes as we see what side they're on, and we have a premier who is against it, what is the real plan?
The real plan is to take over the UCP, get memberships, and oust the premier. Get somebody in there that is actually going to disregard the federal government, make Alberta sovereign as long as it's in Canada, and then fight for independence. That's what I would say at this point. I've lost a lot of faith in Danielle Smith, though. A lot of people still have it for some reason.
But now let's go into Alberta's Canada.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
Let's start with this from Wall Street Apes that says, quote, you don't hate the media enough. CP24 News in Canada. I'm going to have to censor this.
Yeah, and it's just story after story that's getting me upset today.
Reports are now for an Uber driver who SA'd a woman in a parking lot. That woman left. He followed her, captured her, and SA'd her again. Media assures that she wasn't hurt, quote unquote.
And that's the point. She was assaulted twice, and the media is saying she wasn't hurt. Absolutely ridiculous.
An Uber driver is accused of sexually assaulting a woman in Burlington twice. Police say that on June 16th, 25-year-old Mandeep Singh approached a woman in the parking lot of a Burlington GO station and sexually assaulted her. The victim left, but the accused followed her to a nearby business and assaulted her a second time. She wasn't physically hurt. Singh is facing 2 counts of sexual assault, and police are concerned there may be more victims.
You do not hate the media.
Sexual assault isn't being hurt? Like,
SA'd. Again, YouTube doesn't like these kinds of stories, but a lovely, upstanding Canadian gentleman, as I see.
Well, and then it's, I don't know, like, obviously what he did is worse, but the mainstream media trying to cover it up, saying nobody was hurt.
Well, it's starting to sound a lot like what has been going on in Europe and especially in the UK for the past, 25 years, where they say, oh, these young girls, they start blaming the victim, which I thought during the Me Too era you weren't allowed to do.
Well, marriage, family, and religion is how I think you turn the birth rate around. The government might have another idea there.
It does seem like that might be the plan over in the UK, and that says it getting extremely dark and grim, but I mean, God. Exit Peep says, quote, immigrant fraud's the system, now sues the government in return. Another beautiful gem coming out of the Canadian justice and immigration system.
And this is a bit of a longer story, but fairly interesting how this gentleman seems to be getting citizenship here.
And I forget this creator's name, but he's really good. I'll try to remember.
What the fuck, Canada? Give me a second because it gets real good. This is the wildest justice system and immigration story coming out of Canada I've ever heard. Meet Gurpreet Singh. Came to Canada 10 years ago on a temporary visa, lying on his application saying that he was going to go work at a Sikh temple. But to the surprise of absolutely no one, turns around and starts committing visa fraud by writing fake work letters and importing a bunch of other Indians in Canada under these fake work letters. And he was also apparently doing other work that he was not allowed to do under his visa. And he also, for the 10 years that he was in Canada, did not pay or file any income tax whatsoever. So lo and behold, he gets caught by CBSA for this entire fake visa scheme and the fact that he also lied on his own visa application and was doing illegal work and was not paying any taxes. Conveniently, during his trial, he tries to blame his roommate, another Indian national that has since fled back to India, saying that he was the victim and that was actually his roommate that was doing the scheme. Well, he was found guilty of 10 out of the 12 charges he was facing, after the judge did not believe his excuse, writing that evidence at trial was unbelievable and I did not find him credible for a litany of reasons. He also had his permanent residency denied. It's kind of wild that he even had the guts to apply for permanent residency, saying that his request to be granted permanent residency on humanitarian and compassionate grounds was no good. Singh had provided no compelling reason why he can't go back to India, where he is a citizen, knows the language and culture, was educated, and where his wife and teen son still live. What the hell was he doing in Canada for 10 years? He was also crying in media saying that after being arrested and spending a year in jail during the trial, he had to eat meat, and he's a vegetarian, and it brought shame to his honor because apparently, committing fraud does not bring shame, but eating meat does. He also did so through an interpreter. Yes, that's right, because after 10 years in Canada, he still did not speak English or French. But here's where it gets really crazy. Gurpreet's lawyer, another great Canadian, decided to file with the court a motion to get the entire case dismissed because he was alleging that the CBSA had intimidated witnesses. Mind you, at the time, that was a complete fabrication. Then, after filing that motion with the court, the lawyer went to the CBSA investigator and told him, they're coming for you. This caused Officer Tisdale to...
We're going to keep playing it, but he's claiming that they were intimidating him. Then when that didn't work out, he went and intimidated the CBSA officer. And then let's watch what happens.
For his safety and reputation, as noted by what the judge said in court. But nonetheless, Officer Tisdale decided to start investigating the entire premise on his own. And that actually tainted the investigation. When the judge opened the motion and looked into it, he realized that, yes, indeed, the officer just screwed everything up. Mind you, all this happened after the conviction, but right before, 1 day before sentencing. And this judge, right here, another great Canadian, decided to throw the entire case out, thus letting Gurpreet Singh walk free. And of course, getting off scot-free after committing fraud and screwing over your host nation for all these years is not enough, because Gurpreet Singh is now suing the Canadian government for money and for a permanent residency, claiming that he was just a victim.
And that's one way to get PR. And just judging by the judge, he was looking for an excuse to throw that case out.
And I will say, once again, there is a scheme that we continue to see repeatedly, both in Europe and apparently, obviously, now in Canada, where it's essentially you are allowed to get into the infrastructure, start working within the infrastructure, and then you make that infrastructure your own. The lawyer, the judge, everybody else, obviously working to change and meddle with the system as they probably usually used to do in their own country.
Well, I know another thing I'll say, and I'm against mass immigration, so I rarely use this talking point, but when you have so many immigrants coming from one country, which is India, it needs to be dispersed evenly amongst multiple countries if you want to go the way of immigration. Now, I'm against mass immigration, so I typically don't talk about it, but it's becoming a massive problem. It's erasing Canadian culture, which the government wants to erase anyway, and it's replacing it with Indian culture.
Well, but it also used to be a lot more equal as to where the immigrants were coming from. And again, it's very clear and obvious that one specific sector has been taking more advantage and being given more opportunities than others.
Well, and it's being written into these trade agreements, and this is part of the problem.
Because I would also ask, isn't like Latin American countries, Mexico, etc., closer to Canada technically than all the other countries where people are coming from?
Well, not even closer, but culturally a lot closer, because you share what would be Christianity, which is the founding religion, I would say, of Canada, the United States, and a lot of these Western countries. But they want to go to India, they want to go to China, they want to go to these places where their culture is going to mix like water and oil. It's just not.
And also because of the stupid investment schemes that they allowed a lot of these these immigrants to do by parking their money in Canadian infrastructure and real estate. Well, now they're having to kind of backtrack and figure out what to do because they don't know where to get new infrastructure. Canadian Insurance says, quote, "Don't call it a condo bailout, it's rent to own and it can work," says the T. Is this just a fantastical way to try to spin a taxpayer bailout? There'll be a net loss. Yes.
Yeah, this is a bunch of propaganda, and this is what they're trying to spin it as. A lot of people don't know the inside of this story, but billions are going into the condo bailout. People know that surface level. People don't know the second level that leaked out, that these condos are supposed to be rent to own, not for Canadians, but for new immigrants. And why do they want new immigrants to rent to own? Because they want to trap them in these contracts. Period. Too many immigrants are coming to Canada, waking up fairly quick and saying, "Oh no, I need to leave."
Yeah. Next, French Truth says, quote, Carney, I will say, is holding a massive business Brookfield meeting in Toronto just days before Parliament resumes. He's not even trying to hide it anymore. Neither are they with the bailout, for example. But yes, Brookfield has a summit for Canadian investment September 14th to the 15th in Toronto, Ontario, even though it's technically supposed to be in the U.S. and a U.S. company now.
Yeah, and as soon as they get Parliament working, they're going to start passing those bills over. They have a majority government. This is going to work hand in hand, I'm sure. And that's it. That's it for that section, I believe.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know where my head is at today.
And again, we had a little technical issues earlier on with the Wi-Fi. I accidentally deleted the notes when we changed sets, so we didn't know the ends of the section. Exactly. I typically gather the stories in the morning, though, so I got a kind of an idea.
Yes. Philip Vespa says, it sucks because there are so many good Sikh Canadians. They get a bad name because of these monsters and can't stand being around their own community.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen a couple good immigrant family earlier when we were, John talking to Albertans, we're talking to them. And they say, no, it's okay to have our culture at home, but we should be adopting Canadian culture when we're out in public and things like that. Instead, what you're having is mass immigration and Canada Day basically being erased.
Dal Robinson says, try that in my small town. And over at UMBLE, KP4U says, 100%, that's my guy. I don't know who, but. And now, Where are we? Let's go to
Alberta
Alberta
and the
and
world.
Oh, we're almost done. Yes, and let's...
You pushed Alberta Personalities there.
No, I didn't.
I just watched it.
I saw Alberta and the world.
I'm behind here.
Yes, you're behind.
Okay.
In many different ways.
Oh yeah, it says Alberta in the world.
Exactly. But now let's start with this from Wexit. Peep says, quote, Mexico is officially outperforming Canada while our dollar gets crushed like a tin can. While Canada trades down into a frozen tundra of high taxes and endless bureaucratic failure, Mexico took the crown as the #1 trading partner with the USA. Better economy, better weather, better food, and actual growth. Well, it's not all sunshine and rainbows down here. I am from here, so... But still.
But what you're seeing is Mexico's already pulling away just on the strength of their trade deal with the United States. And Canada's dollar hasn't even fallen off a ledge yet. When that happens, Mexico's going to become what Canada once was, and Canada's going to become what Mexico once was. It's almost like they're shifting places.
What does it say about your economy, your government, your prime minister who's been in office for over a year now? What does it say about your whole country when your currency, the Canadian dollar, is collapsing, cratering against the Mexican peso? Hey, I've been living in Mexico in the winters for the past 3 years, and we decided to rent a beautiful condo. And we were paying the equivalent of, I guess it's about $1,800 Canadian per month a year ago. And now we're paying just over 2,000 Canadian a month. Why? Because the Canadian dollar is literally falling like a rock out of the sky against the Mexican peso. The world has more confidence in the Mexican economy than the Canadian economy. Let that sink in. Canadians, what?
Let that sink in, but also with the U.S. openly calling us and us obviously being a narco state, and yet our economy is doing better, even with all of that baggage as well.
Well, we're getting rid of China. We're strengthening the alliance with the United States. We're addressing the organized crime issue with the United States, working hand in hand. Also, it is becoming the golden age of Central and South America, of the entire North American continent, except for Canada, that seems to want to be the holdout. Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, is a far-left ideologue, just like Carney, but she's cooperating. Carney needs to take a page out of her book at this point.
Or again, it might be managed decline on purpose.
Well, Mark Carney is betting everything the Democrats are going to win in 2028, and he can go back to the way things were. That's never going to happen. Even if they do win, I think things aren't going to go to the way they were.
No, especially because, again, with the Shield of the Americas and a lot of the other Latin American countries turning towards the right, now that USAID isn't there to help out the crazy lefty governments that used to keep getting elected over here for decades. Well, now he has less help in the rest of Latin America, when before he did have a lot of essential communists backing the U.S. Democrats.
Did you take off that last story?
I don't remember.
No, can you go into the last story?
Oh, yes, I took it off.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Sorry.
I wanted to go to the first couple comments there because they were pretty interesting.
Do you want me to go back?
No, it's fine. That what they were kind of talking about there was liberal snowbirds are pissed because they're having to pay more now. Okay, let's continue to go.
Sorry, hold on. I had to wipe my eye. American Nightmare says, breaking George Soros ordered funding for only non-whites.
Yeah, and very interesting. She used to work for George Soros. She used to, on top of that, she's now a whistleblower. So very interesting here.
Is it the donors that are driving this craziness?
It's a combination of the donors and the consultants. I would see the craziest things behind the scenes. It is so much worse than you can ever imagine. The public doesn't know this. But George Soros' organization actually put out a directive around 2020, 2021 that said that they were only going to donate to organizations led by non-white leaders for the next 5 years. I personally saw people that didn't get jobs because of this policy. Organizations were terrified of losing their funding. It completely changed the leadership class in the Democratic Party.
Is it the donors?
And this is absolutely crazy because it's already crazy enough, these DEI hiring policies, but at least a few percentages of people are going to get through. Now they're saying nobody is to be hired that's in a leadership role that is of a certain race. That's straight racism.
Yes. Also, Similarly on that vein, commentary Rush Limbaugh News says, quote, the national co-chair of the Democratic Socialists of America, and you'll start hearing a lot more about them soon, confirmed her party's real agenda live on Fox News on Sunday, abolish the state, true, essentially all the insanity that they get blamed for.
We can just watch the clip here, but before we do, people need to understand who the Democratic Socialists of America are. The leader of the Democratic Socialists of America is Bernie Sanders. AOC is in that wing of the party. They're attempting a takeover of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is currently trying to push them out. The midterms in the 2028 election will be very interesting with this component kind of going on right now.
So we're going to put up on the screen a few of the things that are part of your platform. And I want to ask you, just give me sort of a true or false on these. Abolish the Senate. True. Okay. Replace the presidency and Supreme Court as we now know them. Yep. Abolish ICE. Absolutely. Abolish borders and give amnesty to anyone currently in the U.S. illegally. As a long-term plan, yep. Defund the Pentagon. Absolutely. Abolish prisons, at least in large part. Yeah, again, that as part of a long-term program, yeah. Okay, so no prisons. Government or public ownership of most large corporations. Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to put up on the screen a few...
Communism.
Mark Carney could be a DSA member for all we know.
Yeah.
Similar policies there. And it's crazy they're going right on the news and saying this.
I mean, thanks for doing our job easier, but however, there's one kind of intelligent state. King David says, quote, Florida now requires the mandatory instruction of the horror of communism be taught beginning in 2026 to 2027 school year. Florida always leads the way. And it's crazy to me that more education systems, especially, for example, the Canadian one, don't even talk about the horrors of communism, much just talk about the virtues of it.
So the state of Florida has just made history. Florida is set to become the first state in the nation requiring mandatory instruction on the history of communism in public schools starting in the 2026-2027 school year. Students will learn about the horrors of communism and the destructiveness of Marxism, including atrocities under communist regimes, suppression of freedoms, and why these ideologies threaten liberty. I am so glad that Florida is doing this, and I hope that there are many, many states, hopefully eventually all of them, that follow suit. This is
how was this not a thing already? And this is the big issue. This is academia.
Mm-hmm. And again, it explains a lot as to why so many people and so many young people specifically do think that socialism and communism is the answer and that capitalism is terrible. Because one, they're not taught how capitalism actually works and the benefits that it's brought societies all over the globe for the past centuries. And they don't get taught about what actually happens under communism, what has actually happened under communism and socialism too.
Yeah.
I saw a terrifying clip of someone asking a young person if they were a socialist and what they thought about socialism. And he said, oh, well, socialism is great. You should get together more with your friends. They were confusing socialism with socializing, which is insane to me that that's still happening.
Socialism, everybody knows it was the soft sell on the way to communism.
Mm-hmm. But now they're even confusing people with the meaning of the damn word. Next, Ryan Gertison says, quote, another person caught dumping illegally. What are the odds he just drove somewhere else and tossed it all out of his car? Canada, slow progression into turning into a third world country continues. Yes.
Don't do that in our country. I've got your license plate. I'm calling the cops.
Why is it short?
Go.
Okay, and you can leave it there. It's the forests are becoming dumpsters, and the beaches are becoming bathrooms.
It's crazy that that's not even happening that much in Mexico anymore, which it used to happen a lot here.
Yeah.
Learn our lesson. Is the next one? Is that it, or is there?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Now we'll go back to your comments and then we'll go to RUMBLE. And again, today I don't have my notes as to where each segment ends. But Philip Espa says to Primor's 007, I guess you're right. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah applies in this case. Yes, it does. And Primor's 007 says, yeah, they all need to go either the nice way or the hard way.
Yeah.
Canadian Spider-Man, hello, says hello to you and the guy from High River. Hello.
Oh, good to see you.
Says it's sad to see how quick people are to demand new legislation in Canada instead of education and raising kids properly, lowest common denominator laws.
Yeah.
And that they've been trained to trust in the government so much to not even question what these kinds of laws and the implications that they have, but also to demand them, to end up demanding more governmental control.
Let's just stack laws on top of laws on top of laws on top of laws, giving the government all the power so the government can then utilize whatever laws they want to go after certain groups and certain people. It's absolutely ridiculous. Just have the same laws for everybody, keep them simple, and actually enforce them.
Canadian Spider-Man says, how did we know it was going to be a Karen just like her, the leader of the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America? Yes.
Yeah.
Canadian Spider-Man also says Florida rocks. And also says, what is wrong with her face? Brain damage. Yeah, I didn't understand the demon face that lady had, but okay. Canadian Spider-Man says, my friends on the East Coast are posting in Facebook today about how good socialism is for New York City. Let them learn, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, New York is going to learn really quick. Actually,
They already are.
I didn't bring the story up today, but Zoran Mondani did the biggest doxing I think in U.S. history there.
How?
He released a list of all the apartments and all the names of all the owners of the apartments that had high rents.
Can they sue him? I don't think he has any money left to pay for anybody suing the government, but Primor's 007 says they aren't confused, Nat, they are stupid. I would say both. And Philip Espa says mandatory instruction of communist failings should be in every classroom around the world. And yet it has not been because of several different things, but one specific gentleman called Paulo Freire, which is whom the whole education system is based around, and the reason why Marxism, communism, etc., is taught so positively in a lot of classrooms in Canada, the U.S., and the rest of Latin America too.
Well, and this is why the United States actually has a chance, because they're pushing back on this. Canada is already captured. Communism is quickly coming to Canada. Nationalization of natural resources is modern day communism. The government is going to own the means of production, and they're going to sell it as Marxism because the people are control of the government. Therefore, the people own the mining and the people own the natural resources. The people own the companies. That's not how it works.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and now let's head over to RUMBLE. Again, we have a big segment over there because there's been a lot of things coming out involving Fauci and etc. So come join us over there. Please don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube because, again, it is what helps us out the most. And we'll see you there in about 30 seconds. Sorry for all the glitches today.
Let's get ready to